shit to keep us aligned. Learn that love was important, I guarantee you'll be fine. Lost in thoughts, got my mind rushing. Spacing back and forth, just trying to create something. Wish that I could pick this pen up and draw this picture and become the person I see when I look in the mirror.
Hey everybody, welcome to day 12. A little bit of more laid back vibe, and I think the audio is not quite good on the mix I'm chilling to in the background, so I'll just turn that down, but I'll get that sorted eventually. We'll have music. This will be a classy kind of a podcast video series affair. Still really dig into the City Nights mix from yesterday. Amazing. But yeah, welcome to day 12 of AI and Art. It is the end of the week here. It's Friday, technically Saturday at now almost a little past 2 in the morning. Another late night, another pretty crazy day, but we are here. And I thought today actually just do kind of a look back at this week, at the things that were built and the things that were learned, and sort of where that leaves us. Yeah, sort of if you're gonna skip all the rest of the week, this would be the one to sort of catch you up. So yeah, at the start of this week, I had a big pile of text messages. Didn't really have any bots that said anything, didn't have any neural networks that generated things. Was sort of like, I hope this turns into something. And was really just wrestling with like the memories that were in those text messages more than anything. And today, I have multiple neural networks, a response-based bot. There's 2 networks training right now on my computer, so let's see if we've got, yeah, for those of you who are tuned in on the live stream, like, please tell me if the quality is really bad or anything, because my computer's working really hard, just trying to train up some AI in the background. So we've got like real neural networks that are making things. One is producing really staggeringly normal text messages. I can sort of show folks who are watching this on the YouTube, this is what it looks like when it's training, but here is sort of the latest round of things, and a lot of these are pretty normal looking. We've got "It's wonderful for you," "We all agree," lots of "I'm here," "I forgot," "See you then." So really normal looking things. And again, like recurrent neural networks, they're just building knowledge character by character, so they don't know anything about words or language or English or any of that. And it kind of, I'm surprised to find myself, again, thanks for, yeah, terrible chair sound. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna break one episode, just wait for it. Yeah, so it's 2 weeks in, we're sort of halfway through the month, and I've got to now start turning some of this knowledge into like a real piece of art. And that's an open question about how that's going to happen. I am interested sort of a lot of the edges of memory and patterns that have come off of this, and I think next week is really going to be the week where I take what I've learned and I take what I've got and I sort of decide this is what the piece needs to be about, and I start really building in that heart. So that's going to be fun. I've got a couple of ideas, but I don't really have that figured out. That is part of the joy of this process and or the terrifying part about this process. But we'll see how that goes. This week, though, yeah, some big lessons that I learned. One was really that recurrent neural networks are not actually that hard to make. Like, the tools are really good. The tools that are out there are good. Google released TensorFlow, and there are a bunch of papers from various companies and universities around sort of the cutting edge of how to build neural networks. And people have largely made like an increasingly sophisticated set of wrappers around those. Weirdly, a lot of them are students. Maybe that's not weird. Maybe that's normal. But what's funny is that because of open source and GitHub, like somebody made a project because they thought it was interesting to explore, and then a bunch of students clearly with homework assignments, because it says in their like own repositories when their homework is due, or like that they have to do a video about it. It's pretty funny actually. They all just like took the work of the previous person who tried to do this thing and then like improved it a little bit and then made some notes, and then the next person did it, and so you find these chains of people who have taken the same basic template that originally came from Google and just like made it a little bit better and a little bit easier, and all passed their classes presumably. And then people like me get to show up and be like, great, I'll take that. That's great. So it's really actually pretty straightforward to set up, even if you're not like a programming kind of person. All the commands are there. You just copy, paste, kind of go for it. And recurrent neural networks themselves, they are really cool. They're crazy cool. The idea that a piece of code can start with just some data, some messages, and then develop over time its own model for how to replicate things that look like that, and that model can be really good. I was sort of surprised at how good that those projections and the things that were said were. One a little bit earlier was like, I'm sort of down, but I'm gonna like quesadilla and something else rally, and they were like definitely things that I would do, but I'd never sent that message before. Like so it was kind of cool to see the way that like this sense of yourself, or the sense of whatever you feed it, the essence of that comes through, even if the precise things don't. The other thing I learned, small is better than big if you're trying to like map this stuff. So like short messages were a lot more convincing than long ones. The long ones looked right, the patterns were right, but the words didn't make sense always. So you were like, it's not quite the thing. And this isn't a new learning, but if you want to train an AI, you need lots of data, particularly good data is the most helpful. The other thing I thought I would talk about, sort of looking back on the week, was what's been the most interesting, or what's been the most surprising. So I think probably the most interesting and surprising is really about like ICANN has cheeseburger talk. So for everybody who knows, ICANN has cheeseburger is an amazing, beautiful set of memes that then spawned an entire subculture on the internet, and that includes a way of texting mostly. Most people don't say this stuff out loud. Some of us do, some do. I'm not saying I do, but some do. I don't judge. That does interesting things to English. So in particular, a lot of the like prepositions and articles are stripped out. So instead of like, can I have a cheeseburger, it's ICANN has cheeseburger. And interesting, English has its own tonality that shifts with that. But what's fascinating is structurally what's happening with the language is a lot of the connecting bits and a lot of the sort of formality of English is ripped out. And a lot of the ways that words are supposed to be ordered are now much more flexible. So the like connective tissue of the words is way more like floppy all over the place. And it turns out that if you're training like sequence to sequence or RNNs, like the neural networks, to speak based like to text you basically, ICANN has cheeseburger speak is more common than normal language. And the reason for that is kind of obvious in that like the recurrent neural networks don't really know all of the rules of English grammar. So they're not doing things quite right. So they're going to drop some things you're supposed to have, and they'll put things slightly out of order. But in an ICANN has cheeseburger universe, that's normal and cool. And in a proper English universe, they're kind of dumb. They're not doing it right. So that was an interesting notice. I think that generations determine language, right? So the people who are young right now are the ones who decide what the language looks like. And largely people are moving more in like language is shifting, in the English language at least, is shifting in a more I can has cheeseburger direction. And so you get like shortening of words, and text messages have had a huge impact on language. And this is going to get really interesting when we start to interact with more kind of AI avatars and more neural networks that are representing companies and eventually sort of parts of ourselves and various parts of our lives. And I'd be sort of surprised based on what I've seen tonight if we don't move broadly a lot more towards an I can has kind of world. And with that, sort of an emoji world. That's the other thing with things that are easy for neural networks. Emoji are easy for neural networks, so they can't misspell emojis. You can put emojis in basically any order, and they still maintain most of their semantic meaning. From an AI perspective, like emoji are the quintessential way to communicate because everyone knows what you're saying. And you can kind of mess it up and it still will get the point across. So I think that one learning that surprised me is, if I'm going to look like far into the future, I'm going to say that emoji and I can has cheeseburger are going to be key parts of the English language that are never going to go away. Another interesting, surprising thing is the mix I listened to last night is just really good. I didn't know about it. It's fantastic. If you've missed it, I'll leave a link down in the description. And the description is wrong right now. It says it's day 11. It's not. So if you're watching the stream, sorry about that. But that mix was just good. Like there's just amazing music happening on the internet, and in specific, people are really using music and visualization in really interesting ways. So you have like these hour-long mixes that you can throw up on a TV or on a monitor and just have that in the background, but it also has sort of this music video beauty to it that just lets you think or study or chill or whatever it is. Really enjoying the way that's going. Other thing I think that is interesting in terms of the bigger picture is that like outliers I think are going to be kind of endangered. So what do I mean by that? Neural networks are fitting data to a graph. And so largely what they're doing is like trying to get you something that approximates most of the data they were fed. So then you have all these sort of points here on a normal curve. If there's something like way off in the edge that isn't connected to any of the rest of it, like that's never going to show up. It's never ever going to fit the model. It's definitely going to get pulled out. And that's not ever going to be part of what the output that's produced by this thing is. And that's kind of okay and kind of terrible and terrifying because, you know, by their very nature, like minorities are outliers. And so something we really need to think about in terms of how AI grows in our society is how we handle especially when it gets into a space that's involving, say, human rights. Like, how do we make sure that the property of the system fit of trying to approximate a big data set of complicated people doesn't actually throw out very valid people who are on the edges? We already have problems with this in society, so it's not a new problem, but I do think that, you know, based on the stuff I already know and the stuff I'm really seeing in the work thus far, the risk for that is significant, and it's something we sort of really need to keep an eye on. So that was stuff that I wasn't really thinking about going into this week, and was really surprised to learn. And so I guess the next thing is really like, yeah, what is next week? Next week is sort of just figuring out exactly this echo of me. How do I want to sort of misrepresent that? What's the angle I want to take on that? You know, we've mentioned that you think about like a painting, right? A painting isn't trying to be an exact representation. It's taking a perspective. It has an agenda and an angle, and it's emphasizing for certain parts and de-emphasizing others. And that's sort of an open question around what is this project going to do. I don't want to just put up an exact best fit to my text messages and say, hey, type to these. They're sort of like my text messages. Like, that's not. It's a kind of fun experiment, but I don't think that it qualifies as art. And so I think next week is really, whether it's thinking about this memory component or the deep emotional memories, or I don't know what that's going to be. That's the part I've really got to explore and get right and understand. And so next week I'll be really trying to get that dialed in and really making the heart of this thing. Week 4 I kind of think is going to be finishing it off, packaging it up so that you can come play with it, and maybe writing up, if it ends up being some technical pieces, sort of writing up an open source thing for that. So that's where we are week 2. I'm still really glad I've done this project. It's been a little bit crazy. I've been up till like 2 in the morning every night trying to get it done, but thus far worth it. Lots of learning, lots of excitement. If you missed yesterday's crazy episode of me just not making any sense and being really excited about what the network had generated, I don't know what you're doing with your time. Maybe you have something better to do, but it's kind of fun. It's fun. I would love for anybody who's listening to this on your podcast or the YouTube, actually, either way, just give me your feedback. So I want this to be a journey that is enjoyable for everybody. So you can leave me a comment or send me an email at steven@inkandfeet.com, and just tell me what you like, what you don't like. Are these too long? Are they too short? Do you want more technical details? Do you want more stories? Would you like to hear me talk about sushi springs more, which I can't pronounce. I have a little bit of a tongued sushi spring. Brought to you by Sushi Spring. It's not brought to you by, this is not endorsed by Sushi Spring in any way. I just love their food. Let me know what you think and what you're enjoying and what you want to hear a little bit more of. I want to make this great for you, and your feedback is what really lets me do that. So thank you again for joining me. I'm going to take a couple days for the weekend, and then I will be back first thing on Monday. We'll keep going from there. Have a good one. Take care.